every time we base a rut based on some sort of struggle that we're dealing with in life. There's some sort of circumstance that's come along, and it is now difficult and hard. And if you could, you would get by it or shake it off or move on as quickly as you could from that. That's how we call a rut. It's not a good thing, because when those types of ruts show up, what often happens for us is we go into survival mode. We're just trying to get by. We're just trying to get past this thing as much as possible. What's weird about a rut where it's about stress and the struggle and all of that sort of thing is sometimes our first response is to withdraw from everybody in our lives. We just pull back and we hide and we say to ourselves, I'll get this solved and then I'll re-engage with everybody that I care about. Now, I think there's problems with that. I think there's another problem that happens when we enter into survival mode too. And I want to give you that in a weird way. I grew up around a lot of animals. I never want to have animals again. I associate it with a lot of consistent hard work. That's what I mean. That's what it means to me. My wife has this romantic idea about someday having chickens. She's just convinced it's going to be the best thing ever. And we had chickens. I have opinions. They poop on everything. It's hard to clean up, and it is a terrible smell. There is nothing about that is attractive to me. And yet, I think someday we're probably going to have chickens, right? That's why I think this is headed. Now, I was told something about chickens when I was young that I remembered when I was preparing this, and I went and looked it up, and I found out it's true. I was told that if you ever came across a hatchling, a chick that was hatching out of an egg, that you should not help it. That if you helped it, you could do more harm than good. I looked it up. It turns out that's accurate. That's actually a real thing. Now, here's what I decided to do. I actually found a time-lapse video of a chick hatching out of an egg. It's 47 seconds long. It will be sheer torture for you. Because if you're a problem solver, you will want to help that chick solve this problem. But I want you to understand, this 47 seconds represents 45 minutes. Like, if you don't have the patience to let this unfold for 47 seconds, could you have stood there and watched this for 45 minutes? Ask yourself that as you watch this. Check this out. I bet you the chick was really grateful to have this background music too. Because it's bored. Don't worry, there's a big finish. All right. Now, if your first thought seeing that chick come out of that egg is, how in the world did something that big fit in something that small? That is, by the way, the first thought I had when I saw our first son born. I was like, what just happened here? I had questions. There was a doctor. They've been answered. I'm good, all right? But that was like, what is going on? Now, it turns out with this chick, they're actually not fully developed when they go into the hatching process. They're so crammed in there that their stomach area doesn't have enough circulation. And the pecking that they do, all of that effort to break out, starts to work those muscles, allowing nutrients and blood and everything else to flow into that area, which starts the kind of development of that area that if you broke open the egg, it wouldn't get. In fact, here's what I read. They suggested that if you broke open that egg, it would be worse for that chick than if you just let it struggle and die if it couldn't get out of there. Because it doesn't have, like, it wouldn't have any kind of strength, and it would immediately be in some serious pain. So, did anybody, like, see that for 47 seconds and go, oh, this is driving me nuts. Somebody just ripped the egg off that thing, right? Yeah, somebody like, yes, let's get this done with. That is the temptation. That's the temptation that we have that I want to address. Because humans are not chickens, all right? They're not chickens. It's not a good idea to leave them alone in their struggle. And if some of them don't make it, well, it's probably better off that that's happened, right? That's wrong. The idea that you would let people isolate and go into a cocoon, not good. But here's the other thing that's just as bad. It's just as bad to enter into that struggle and try to remove it quickly or help them get past it quickly, because you take away their ability to develop, grow, and get the nutrients out of that struggle. I know that seems crazy. It seems problematic. I will tell you that the people who struggle the most with this, for good reason, are parents. Like, it's difficult when you view yourself as the protector to go, well, what do you mean you're going to let me struggle? I'm supposed to be their support. I'm supposed to be their guide. I'm supposed to be their help. All of that is true. All of that's true. And doing those kind of things are really helpful. But if you rob your child of some struggle, you could actually make them worse off than not. I told you the beginning of the series last week, I'll just kind of remind everybody that sometimes we're going to talk specifically about something that it has to do with a struggle, but the truths could be applied broadly. I'm really convinced about what we're going to talk about today have the ability to apply broadly, but we're going to talk about, I'm going to try to make the case this evening for allowing struggle to play out in the lives of our kids and students because of the long-term potential that it has for them. Okay? By the way, not my idea. I stole it. I stole it from a guy named Paul, who was inspired by the Holy Spirit to write something that's really difficult to process. All right? In Romans chapter 5, he starts by talking about how important it would be to glory. He uses the word glory in the hope of God. That word means like to be excited about, to brag about, to embrace the hope of God. Well, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. We're all on board. Hope of God, embrace, in. And then he writes this. This is the beginning of verse 3. Not only so, not just the hope in the glory of God, but also glory in our sufferings. Why is he writing that? Who in the world wants to hear anything like that, ever? I think what's fascinating to me is if you realize who he wrote that to in the first place, that had to be difficult. He was writing to the Roman church, and he was writing it to them because they were in a lot of conflict with each other. There were Greek Christians and Roman or Jewish Christians in that church, and they were in conflict for a reason. At one point in their history, the emperor decided he didn't trust any Jew and kicked them all out of Rome. If you've ever moved in your life, you know how miserable that is. Like, it's got to be in the top 5. You guys are about to find out. It's going to be terrible, but it's fine. You chose it, right? You're choosing to move. We do that to ourselves. I'm moving and I chose it. These guys were forced to do that. Imagine that. You're forced to do that. And at this time in history, they had moved back to Rome. 2 moves, not by their choice. They didn't get their homes back. They didn't get their property back. They didn't get their jobs back. They're rebuilding their lives. Their lives are hard. And on top of that, what happened was when they left, all that was left in in the Roman church were Greek Christians. And so they tailored the church to be the kind of experience that they would love. And when these Jewish Christians came back, there was nothing Jewish about the service, and they wanted Jewish things in the service. And there was massive conflict going on. There was a fight going on. And Paul writes to them and says, find glory in your suffering. It had to be hard to read for the first time. I can just tell you, it doesn't get easier over time, even if it's not written to you. To hear somebody say, find glory in some sort of suffering, especially when you're talking about people that we love. What am I supposed to say to my son who's just lost a friendship that feels like betrayal? Find glory in that? What am I supposed to say if they're struggling to make it through school? Find glory. What if they're dealing with a relationship that causes them a lot of stress? Hey, I want you to find glory. What happens if they've had a dream for many years and they suddenly realize they're not going to reach it? Find glory. If you told them over and over and over again to do something and you are wearing down and you think, oh my word, they're going to be the end of me, why won't they listen? Find glory. Well, what happens when they're older and the mistake they make causes them to end up with you standing with them in court facing the music? Find glory. My wife and I have 5 kids, and we've had a lot of swings at the bat, and it hasn't gone perfectly, and every one of those scenarios that I just laid out for you, I've experienced. And I can tell you firsthand, especially early on in life, my first thought was not find glory. My first thought was, is there any way for me to smooth this over and make this go away quickly? Can we get past this? Can we get around this? Is there any way I can help make this better? And later in life, I came to realize the value in understanding that some of the consequences that you accumulate, you have to face. And some things that you didn't do at all, you also have to face, because this is the life we live in. Now, to be fair to Paul, he didn't say just glory in sufferings. He had something else to say. He added it. He adds a because, so he gives a purpose, a reason. The next part of the verse says, because we know that suffering produces perseverance. It's not, hey, go out and find some suffering because you're a sick sadist who wants to be miserable. It's not that. That's not here. This is Paul going, there's a long-term benefit of you going through this instead of past it. Going through this produces perseverance. It produces something in you where you grow and you learn and it changes you. There's something valuable in the process. I ran across a saying that caused me to think that's a perseverance mindset. This is the way somebody who has perseverance thinks. Thomas Edison was asked about the invention of the light bulb, and he said, I didn't fail 1,000 times. The light bulb was an invention that required 1,000 steps. He didn't look at each failure as, oh, I got to start over. He's like, okay, I know more, I know more, I know more, I know more. That is what Paul is suggesting here is possible through embracing, finding glory in the struggle. Now, he's not done. He adds to it. He said, it's not just you'll see perseverance. He then says in verse 4, perseverance brings character. and character, hope. What he just described here is a feedback loop. It's I run into a struggle in my life. I decide to go through it, and I learn perseverance. And that perseverance grows character in me. What's that mean? Character. I learn more about God. I learn to trust God. I learn to hear from God. I learn some stuff that allow my relationship with God to grow, which then produces hope. And when you have hope, the next struggle that comes along gives you the courage to go through it and learn perseverance, which gives you more character. By the way, who wants to sign up for this feedback loop? Right? It's real, but who wants to do that in the first place? I'm not suggesting that you should go out and try to find some things to make you miserable because it'll be better for your life later on. That's not what I'm saying. Here's what I think. Having lived long enough in a world that's been tainted by sin, suffering will find you. It's just a matter of time. And it will probably find you repeatedly. And the only question you have is how you'll choose to respond to it. Can I make an observation from like years of interacting with people on this stuff? I've noticed that sometimes when people go through struggle, they end up bitter, angry, and resentful. After it's all over, that's what you see. And I've come to this conclusion. Suffering is never a neutral thing. It always produces something. Suffering will always produce something in your life. It has the opportunity to produce perseverance, which could grow character, which could give you hope. But it has just as much of a chance, if you respond incorrectly to it, to grow bitterness and anger and resentment. And so the question is, how do you respond? How do you find a way to have a decent attitude in the midst of a suffering rut that you might find yourself in? You're struggling. You don't like it. What do? How do you not escape it but go through it? All right, I want to offer you a couple things. One of them that I think is easily broadly applied. The other one might be a little more narrow, but I actually think it works for adults too. Okay, so I'm going to give you this idea. The first thing I think that would be helpful is if you could accept or offer, depending on where you're at in that rut process. Maybe you're on the outside watching somebody who's suffering. Maybe you are the one who's in the rut. You could accept or offer the gift that God offers in this situation, which is his presence. He offers his presence. In fact, it says this pretty directly in Hebrews 4:16. Let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in our time of need. It's specifically, hey, I've got a time of need. I've got some struggle. I've got some issues going on in my life. And God says, I'm available. Show up. Like, I'm here. With what? With mercy and grace, which is odd because often the first response when struggle happens is we withdraw and we tell ourselves, I haven't withdrawn from God, I've just withdrawn from other people. But what we don't realize is that often God uses his people in our lives to present mercy and grace. And when you withdraw from people, you withdraw from one of the tools that God intended to use in your life all along. And it becomes this damaging thing. Now, here's the thing. What's interesting about this is the little phrase at the end, to help us in our time of need. What most people read when they see that is this means God's going to help me get out of this thing. That means God's going to solve this problem. That means no, that's not necessarily what it means. And if you've ever had an experience where you've had a struggle in life that you pleaded with God to do something about and nothing seemed to happen, what was going on? God was offering you his presence. But he wasn't going to take away this thing from you that was going to possibly grow some perseverance and character that would lead to hope. He wasn't going to rob you of that. So he was with you. He was in it with you. He was there. But he didn't want to take it away, which is what I want to make the case for you. That sometimes when you're called to be the one who shows up and is present with somebody else, don't assume that that means that you need to remove the struggle for them. You might not be capable of doing that. It might not even be your responsibility. This is tricky. There could be opportunities where that is your role. That's why you listen to God. That's why you develop a relationship with God. Because there could be a time where God taps you to say, I want you to help this person get out of this. But most of the time, from what I've experienced, what God is looking for is people who will show up and follow his model. People are like, man, I don't want to hang out with people in a rut. I don't know what to do. Mercy and grace. Mercy and grace. You're there. You're loving. You're kind. You're giving an understanding ear. You're going with them through the journey so that they're not alone. And it becomes a healing process. But when we assume that we should get them out of the thing instead of helping them go through it, we could be robbing them of their future. Second thing, this is one that students or kids often hate, but let me explain it. I believe, if at all possible, you should discipline with consistency. Now, some of you have older kids. Disciplining them with consistency is weird, all right? You're in a different ballpark. You're probably not disciplining them, but you're interacting with them consistently. But I want to help you understand why I think this is an important process for students and for you. Like, if you're creating discipline for yourself consistently, there's a reason for it, and I want you to understand that. So in Proverbs chapter 11, I want to at least get the motivation right at first. In Proverbs 3:11, it says, "My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline. Do not resent his rebuke." Most kids, if you told them you were about to discipline them, they would be like, "Oh, this is awful. This is no good reason. You're wasting your time. Why are you doing this to my life?" Well, sometimes we get the motives wrong and they don't like it. The scriptures are really clear in the next verse what our motive should be. Because the Lord disciplines those he loves as the father, the son he delights in. Discipline is not control or punishment. It's about putting boundaries in place because you love somebody. And when your motive is not that, it gets really messy and messed up. Now, I want you to see this. I want to put up on the screen Hebrews chapter 12, because Hebrews chapter 12 reveals that discipline of any kind is pretty much miserable for everybody involved. It's something that people who are receiving discipline don't like, the people who are giving discipline. If somebody likes giving out discipline in your life, they're probably a very scary person. Right? They're messed up. But the reason that you stick with discipline, the reason you keep doing it, is because you've just created a mini moment of suffering. It's small. It's small in comparison. But that moment of suffering is for their good. Like you drew a boundary and you're going to hold them to that boundary. Why? Because if they don't learn how to persevere through that little bit of suffering, they might not learn how to persevere when they suffer in a big way. And so God gives you this tool of discipline that you can present in their life over and over again, which builds the right response to suffering that they will see in their lives later. They've learned how to persevere. They've learned that they can go through this, get to the other side, and be okay. Not just be okay, they might have actually learned something. And so you discipline and you keep disciplining consistently for their future. And because it's so uncomfortable, sometimes what we do is we discipline and They make the case that this is unneeded and you're really cramping my style and maybe you should back off. And we do. We back off. And they never learn the skill. And over a course of a life, what that means is they could get into being a 20-year-old and they don't have any idea how to deal with suffering. And the bad news is it's coming. It's part of this life. So there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity for you to just say, you know what? My discipline, if I do it in love, is not just teaching them this moment, it's also giving them the skills for their future. And it becomes something that you gift them with. These are the choices that you have. Like, suffering's coming. I wish I could tell you it wasn't. But it's coming. And you can find glory in that moment where you push through and you get to the other side and you've learned something about God that changes your life. And I think it's worth doing that because I don't know about you, but I'm still turning out. And I'm still learning and I'm still growing. And I'm still trying to find a way to let God change my heart. And one of the ways he uses is suffering. Stinks. But it's real. Can I pray with you real quick? God, this idea that we might actually have to embrace, celebrate, boast about our suffering is just difficult to swallow. In so many ways, it does not make sense. But when we understand your heart behind it, when we understand the bigger picture of what you have in mind for our lives, that this brief moment of suffering that feels like it's taking our breath away and suffocating our life out of us is just temporary, and the long-term benefit of us knowing you and developing a deeper relationship with you that changes us and gives us hope is right there if we're willing to step into these moments. God, give us the courage to be with each other, to be present, to accept your presence in our lives. God, I don't know if anybody here tonight is in a rut of suffering right now. I don't know when they'll be facing one down the road. But I ask that you would give them the courage to lean in and find glory. God, we're going to give everybody just a few moments of quiet to let you speak to them about the ruts, about these times of suffering that they've looked at, about the discipline that they've had to face or that they've shirked off in their life and they've missed out on the lesson. God, we trust that you have things to say, so we're listening.
Wrapping up this. Here in this moment,
Jesus, Lord of all. We've come to worship, our hearts are open. We bow before you, Jesus, Lord of all. Jesus, how great is your name in all the earth. Jesus, nothing is better than when you walk into the room and do what only you can do. Here in this moment, this holy moment, we bow before you, Jesus, Lord of all. We've come to worship, our hearts are open. We bow before you, Jesus, Lord of all. We sing Jesus. Jesus, how great is your name in all the earth. Jesus, and nothing is better than when you walk into the room and do what only you can do. Jesus, how great is your name in all the earth. Jesus, and nothing is better than when you walk into the room and do what only you can do. You lift our eyes to see you. You set our hearts on fire, and you give us grace to know you. Jesus, you lift our eyes to see you. You set our hearts on fire, and you give us grace to know you. Jesus, so lift up your eyes to see him. You're ready for holy fire. His grace is a roaring ocean. He's here now. So lift up your eyes to see him.
Let's sing that together one more time, church.
Jesus, how great is your name in all the earth. Jesus, nothing is better than when you walk into the room and do what only you can do. Jesus, how great is your name in all the earth. Jesus, nothing is better than when you walk into the room. Do what only you can do.
Father, as we leave this room, may we not leave your presence. May we continue seeking the glory. Whatever we have to persevere, may we continue just leaning into what you have to say to us. To not skip seasons, to just lean in, feel you. Give us courage to ask for help. Give us courage to reach out to those that we need to. With us, Father. It's in your mighty name. Friends, thank you so much for coming tonight. Thank you for worshiping. We love to see you guys next week as we continue this Stuck in a Rut series. So be safe out there. We'll see you guys next week.